No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 4. And breaking today, it has been revealed that 419 illegals invaded the UK via the channel. That's an average, and this is the critical figure, of 70 people per boat. Much higher than before, and proof that the stamada after Labour cancelled the Rwanda scheme is now on. But do you think the MSM asked Slippery Starmer about that on their cosy trip to the US last night? As if. Look at this photo. It shows the media laughing and joking with their new pal. I'm going to have much more on the corrupt mainstream media's Labour lovin' shortly. But please do hit subscribe right now on YouTube, or if you're watching on Rumble too, because we are here every weekday. I was so excited. You guys are the best. Yesterday, during our live show, we hit 100,000 subscribers, and that's after only 3 episodes. Incredible. But please do subscribe right now if you haven't already. And if you have, spread the word. Remember too to sign up for our uncancelled after show. Now, this is really exciting because it's where we come off big tech, truly unleash, and I get to speak to you. So to do that, all you need to do is head right now to the website www.outspoken.live. It's a standalone website. Click the sign up button and you will get 30 minutes extra content completely uncensored every day. But coming up on the show, Reform UK's Howard Cox on that invasion via the channel and the media bias against his party. The CDO's David Campbell Bannerman on the Conservative Party civil war as Kemi Badenoch fights it out with Suella Braverman. Plus, our royal mastermind Angela Levin on the scandal engulfing Prince Harry as calls grow for him to reverse his offer to accept the Pat Tillman award. And that's our outspoken question of the day, which you can vote for within our YouTube community. Does Prince Harry deserve the Pat Tillman Award? Comment too, and I'll get to some of them throughout the show. Angela, by the way, will also have the latest on Doddery Joe Biden, Alec Baldwin in court, and Novak Djokovic's brilliant war with the BBC. Then, of course, it's the after show. Angela Levin's going to be sticking around with me today to unleash, so you're going to want to watch it. www.outspoken.live. But for now, let's go. And if you think there is any chance of the British MSM holding Slippery Starmer to account, then you only had to see the picture, one picture, which told a lot during that flight last night. There they are, the fourth estate, the same people like Pippa Guerrero who hounded Boris Johnson and Liz Truss from office, laughing along with Sir Keir as if he's their best mate. Because guess what? He is their best mate. And this was no one-off. Look at the truly shameful conduct of the British Bashing Corporation's supposedly impartial political editor Chris Mason and Sly News' Beth Rigby during his first press conference.
A basic understanding of the rooms I've used so far here, and that's good, but there are plenty of hidden places I'm yet to discover.
Oh, they just love him, don't they? They are all in this together, just like Biden was with the American MSM, and look how that ended up. In fact, Caitlin Moran of the Times newspaper has even admitted to receiving some type of sexual pleasure from watching Keir Starmer take power. How weird is that? The reality is, and I'm not just saying this because of the launch of this show, but the independent media is the only thing that's going to keep this new government honest, because we have now seen the liberal media for what they really are. I mean, I knew what they really are, but they have truly shown their cards. I mean, come on. They claim to be interested in holding power to account, but in reality, they are only interested in holding those on the right in power to account. Unbelievably, the former BBC presenter turned hard leftist newsagents host Emily Maitlis believes that her priority after this election should be hounding the very polite Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, who she rudely hectored in yet another desperate bid to go viral.
This election is to move further to the right if the electorate has just told you they prefer the parties of the left.
Well, the party to the right got 11 million votes. I think you're ignoring that. You were waiting patiently.
No, but you haven't answered. Sorry.
I have answered the question. You just didn't like the answer. These two things are different.
So 11 million votes enough?
Sorry, I was about to talk to this lady.
Can we just go back to that, the question of ideology?
You've just done me.
I've done, yeah, I know I've done you, but you've got the microphone
Just,
still there.
were you happy to see your
Hello,
moderate
this gentleman
colleagues?
now. Hello.
So, what can you tell us about this reality TV show?
But on that happy
Wait,
note,
Jacob,
I'm
were you-
I'm so sorry.
Don't trip. Extraordinary. Jacob Rees-Mogg is sort of visibly, usually scrupulously polite. Today he was having very little of it. He didn't want to answer questions about the ideology of the party, about why he felt it was more important to take his party further to the right, given the message the electorate has just sent the Conservatives on Thursday. And he was very keen not to answer a single question today from the newsagents.
There is absolutely nothing extraordinary about that. And by the way, absolutely no reason why he should be polite to you, Ms. Mateless. But I thought it was really important to show you that clip to absolutely illustrate, without any doubt, the complete crooked and biased nature of the mainstream media in this country. Ms. Mateless said that he wasn't prepared to answer any question today from the newsagent. You just saw Jacob Rees-Mogg answer her question. As he said, she just didn't agree with the answer. And the problem is, Ms. Mateless, you're an activist, not a journalist. And it is a complete disgrace the BBC ever allowed you anywhere near their election coverage. Then there's the double standards between how the off-communists treat my former channel GB News compared to LBC, which I've now christened the Labour Broadcasting Company. Do you agree with me, by the way? I've been thinking a lot about this, that Carol Vorderman just gets more deranged by the day. Watch this.
Let's go through the list, shall we? Just have a good time. Make yourselves a cup of tea. Grant Shapps, gone. Trias Coffee, gone. Penny Mordaunt, gone. Lucy Fraser, gone. Johnny Mercer, gone. Simon Hart, gone. David T.C. Davis over in Wales, gone. Gillian Keegan. Chichester didn't think that she'd done such a good job after all. Gone. Alex Chalk, gone. Liam Fox, gone. Jacob Rees-Mogg, over and out. Michelle Donnellan and the £34,000 she made us pay for her libelling somebody, gone. Robert Buckland, gone. Simon Clarke, gone. Mark Harper, gone. Quite a few survived, of course, in their very safe seats. They'll now be fighting it out for who will be the next leader of the Tory party.
How on earth can that show be considered balance? But no one cares, certainly not the off-communists, because she is parroting a hard left narrative. Hilariously, the new Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, yesterday declared the culture war was over in her first speech to her new department. Now, she said that with absolutely no understanding of the fact that it is the left that has spent years stoking the culture war, unless actually she was being purposefully intellectually dishonest. But I hope Ms. Nandy, given she's just declared the culture war over, will tell that to the BBC, which she's now responsible. Because remember, that's the BBC that rewrites British history, that prioritises extreme gender ideology over science, and that denigrates Brexit and Reform UK voters at every opportunity. And they were at it again last night, inviting some rude, unknown, hard left extremist onto Newsnight. Look,
have the same policy issues, and we should still be putting pressure on, and that's important. And I think also that I'm not sure if we should be taking advice from someone who crashed the economy in a few days of being in the job as a councillor.
I know you want to do all that political stuff. We're here to have a broad discussion. But thank you anyway for reminding me of that.
To be fair, Michaela can say whatever she wants. And as you can in response.
And I can say whatever I want in response.
And can Derek, you too.
The most hilarious thing to me is that these jokers don't even realise how out of touch and biased they are, because they live in a parallel universe. So I had to show you that by reading you out this unbelievable tweet by the Channel 4 news host Christian Guru Murthy, who wrote, "The challenge for political broadcasting is enormous and rather satisfying to watch. After years of personality-driven and chaotic, shallow politics coverage across much of the media, which was largely about instability, gossip and leadership crises, we now have a government with massive majority, widespread internal agreement, and no likelihood of massive instability anytime soon. A great environment for a program like Channel 4 News, full of policy nerds and people who'd prefer to argue about what ideas work, then who should be the front person?" I mean, there's so much to unpack there. Firstly, Christian Guru Murthy has just admitted they've given up. Channel 4, despite being government-owned and apparently impartial, their main presenter has now just said, we're not even going to bother to challenge the Labour leadership because we agree with them. And then this idea that it was somehow the Conservative Party that was responsible for the chaos over the past few years is rubbish. It was the media, the mainstream media, people like Krishnan, who were responsible for Boris Johnson, a highly popular Prime Minister who was elected with an 80-seat majority, being defenestrated over a cake. And it was that same man, by the way, who called a Conservative minister the C word. So all I will say is thank God that we have the independent media and that the MSM will soon be finished. But now it's time for the uncancelled interview. And yesterday's boat arrivals carried 70 illegals in each vessel. So the Stamada, thank you so much, Sir Keir, as well and truly arriving to our shores. I'm delighted to be joined now by Reform UK's Howard Cox, who ran in the DL and Dover seat, running second in the end to the Labour Party, but putting up a very good fight. And Howard Cox, brilliant to have you on the show. You were completely across this issue after running in that constituency. And it seems almost inevitable, doesn't it? You warned about this. Under Starmer, the people smugglers are emboldened. There's no deterrent anymore, and there's no chance of a deterrent being introduced.
Hello, Dan. Yeah, thanks for being on your show. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I stood in Dover. I campaigned for about four and a half weeks. The Labour guy was campaigning for 2.5 years. So if we had another month or so, I think I could have nicked it. That's the irony of this sort of thing. But you're dead right. I mean, they were waiting on the other side of the channel till the election result was. They were waiting for Labour, and look at them. They're coming in, and it's going to be an exponential growth of immigrants coming in. And, you know, the boats aren't going to be stopped by Labour. They're going to welcome them. They're going to open up more hotels for them. You just listen to Angela Rayner. Every single town and village is going to have to accommodate them. You cannot... This is Enid Blyton fiction, you'd think. But it's not. It's the truth. We are going to be inundated with more and more immigrants.
I know. And the crazy thing is that the National Crime Agency, Howard, has already said the Labour plan ain't going to work. This idea that you can target the people smuggling gangs is not going to work, Sir Keir, because they are not centralised. They're nimble.
Well, this is the point. It's like drug smugglers. We've had, the problems of drugs in this country have been growing for years and years. And the NCA and the police and Europol, Interpol, all of the international agencies have been trying to stop these gangs, and they've failed. It's as simple as that. And Dan, you got it spot on. They're mobile. They move around from position to position. I actually spoke about, I think it's 3 days before the election, to an border control director or manager, and he told me in no way you can stop them unless you stop them on the beaches. Now, we've given £500 million to Macron, and what's he done with that money? We should have been setting up places where we can actually process these people on the beaches of France. But that hasn't happened. All they've done is actually escort them over for our border control to bring them over here. It just beggars belief. And Starmer is in cloud cuckoo land, as is Yvette Cooper. They've got no chance of stopping them. There are going to be more and more coming. And that Reform is the only one that's saying that we should stop them, put them back in their boats and escort them back to France. No one's tried that yet. No one's tried it. Let's do it.
No, and I have been saying for years, as has Nigel Farage, of course, both of us on our GB News shows, that this is a national emergency and that a turn-back policy, I mean, I was also in favour of the deterrent, by the way, but a turn-back policy is utterly essential because it's how Australia managed to stop the boats virtually overnight. Within 1 year, Australia stopped the boats.
Absolutely right. In fact, with that particular person I was talking for Border Force, he actually brought along a person from Australia who was over here working actually with private organisations on other issues, particularly on terrorist crime. But he was involved with that issue, which has stopped the boats coming into Australia. Yes, it was a bigger gap. They had to have proper boats. They couldn't do it in a dinghy going across 1,000 miles of water. That's true. But the way he suggested it is very simple. About half of the actual immigrants coming along to the beach hadn't paid their money to the smugglers yet. They're on the beach. So the best thing to do is, this is so clever and simple, is simply say to them, you don't have to pay £3,000. Pay us £150 for a UK visa, yes, but we'll take you to a nice island off the Scilly Islands. Or off the Orkneys or something, right off in places they wouldn't come across the channel. And once that particular process, that would be the deterrent. Dan, that's the sort of thing. I wasn't a great fan of Rwanda simply because of the cost of the flipping thing, but at least it was some sort of deterrent. And guess what? Keir Starmer on his first day comes into office and says, that's it, dead and buried. And look, we got more coming in now and it's going to grow exponentially. You watch, you mark my words.
Well, he will rue that decision. Because let me tell you, Howard Cox, and I want to speak about Reform UK and what it's been like for you to be part of this growing movement. But let me tell you, and some people might say I'm crazy, but let's see in 5 years' time. I believe, Howard, this is going to be a one-term Labour government. I think this invasion and the absolute unnecessary increase in legal immigration too, which is literally killing this country, and it's killing our public services and it's killing our housing. I think it's going to be so out of control under Labour that in 5 years' time, they're going to be out. And that's where I think Reform UK, and I really do believe this, could end up being in government in 5 years' time, because you were second place in so many seats, nearly 100, after, as you say, literally a matter of weeks campaigning. Now that there's the Fantastic Five in Parliament, there's a chance to campaign for the next 5 years, especially on this issue. And there's also the chance, Howard, and I know right now you'll probably say you don't want it, but there's also the chance for a potential deal with a reformed Conservative Party. I'm not even necessarily talking about a merge, but perhaps some sort of electoral pact, where the Conservative Party runs in areas where they may be more challenged by the Liberal Democrats, and Reform runs in the Red Wall and the seats that you're trying to take from Labour. What do you reckon?
Well, I think you're very astute on this factor. We've all heard Nigel says he wants to lead a centre-right party. That could be some sort of coalition, but Nigel must be running it. That's the point. We can't have a wet Conservative, certainly. And let's face it, they've got 121 seats. And you look at the quality of the actual candidates that are going to lead the so-called Conservative Party. They're Conservative in that name only, as we all know. That's the reason why. It's the only thing I agree with George Galloway in life is, it's the two backsides of the same issue. We've got no difference at the moment. In Parliament, we've got a leftish, House of Commons now, and that we haven't got any right-speaking area except with Reform UK. But Nigel is biding his time. He's promised to be in for 5 to 6 years. One reason why I actually happy to be reform and stand as an MP was Nigel asked me, but also the fact he came along and said he's going to be in it for 5 to 6 years. And
it was a game changer.
It absolutely was.
Okay, but so I just want to dig down a little bit more on the specifics, though. So you think that there potentially could be a deal or a merge, but, and this is going to be a big but, and it's going to be a bitter pill probably for the Conservatives to swallow, and maybe an impossible pill for them to swallow. You say Nigel Farage would have to be the leader of the movement. He wouldn't come in as, say, a deputy behind a Kemi Badenoch, for example.
Dan, you're absolutely right. The guy, we've got 4 million votes. That's what we got, and we got 5 seats. As we know, Lib Dems got less than us, and they got 71, 72 seats. And we got also 5 Palestinian sympathisers who got less, the same. Those sorts of things are happening. Nigel is the only one that talks common sense. He's in touch with the grassroots. He's not rattled by interviews with the mainstream media. He puts the arguments across succinctly, and he answers the questions. No other politician can do that. I've got nothing but respect for him. I've been working with him for about 10 years because, I run a campaign called Fair Fuel UK.
Yes.
And we stopped fuel duty rising. And I work with some good backbench Tory MPs, but most of them were Eurosceptics. They were Brexiteers. They were good people like that. And they're in touch with real people. There are 37 million drivers in this country. And I promise you, I'll be telling them they should be voting reform over the next 2 or 3 years, because I think that this Parliament won't last 5 years.
Oh, God, I hope you're right, Howard. Seriously, I hope you're right, because 5 years of this. I mean, look how mad it's been over the first couple of days. I mean, 5 years of it, I can't stomach it. So I really hope you're right on that. And I agree with you, by the way. I mean, Nigel is the most influential politician of his generation. He's done more than virtually any other major leader. And, I mean, come on. You put him up on a stage and compare him to Kemi Badenoch or Tom Tugendhat or Victoria Atkins, he blows them out the water.
Well, absolutely right. I saw him actually being interviewed recently by Beth Rigby, and he actually took her apart. And all he said, he just answered the questions, and she kept saying, trying to get some soundbite she could use that, in case he slipped up. But he doesn't slip up because he knows the fact. He's so well informed. I'm so impressed with how he's actually delivered this. But we mustn't forget people like Richard Tice, who's been running Reform
I know.
These sorts of people, and he's a lot of his own money as well. But he's good, and you've got great things in Rupert Lowe, and of course Lee Anderson. This is a great base to build on, and I'm probably going to be standing again in 4 or 5 years' time, even at my tender years of I'm 70 now, but I think I'm probably going to do that. Simply because of the promise of Nigel being Prime Minister.
Yeah, and I think it will happen. Actually, I really do. I mean, look at the Marine Le Pen movement in France. I think it will happen. And by the way, I should stress that isn't me saying that Nigel is an identikit type of politician to Marine Le Pen. They disagree on a lot of issues, particularly economically. So, Howard, you, of course, also ran for Reform UK in the London mayoral election too. Yeah. Have you seen the change within the party between that campaign and the general election? Because it seems to very quickly have professionalised and build this movement, and its social media is so much more popular than any other party. Something really changed over the past few weeks.
Well, obviously Nigel was driving it behind the scenes, and he announced his candidature. He became leader and candidature in Clacton. Those sorts of things are a great stimulus. But we are, as you quite rightly said, we had 98 of our candidates came second, mainly to Labour, right across the country. And we're going to go for Labour. In terms of, we're going to be setting up a branch system now. We had hardly any money, hardly any resources, and hardly any time. And look what we've achieved already.
Oh, I know. I actually think it's been very, very impressive. What do you make of the mainstream media coverage of Reform UK, Howard? Because they want to suggest that you're racist, that you're homophobic, that you're, some sort of Holocaust denier. I mean, what Reform UK... I mean, actually, they even now want to suggest that you don't exist. That they're making up these ridiculous claims that the Reform UK candidates were made up individuals. I mean, what happened to the media? Why did they decide to effectively campaign against Reform UK? Is it just their hatred of Nigel Farage or Brexiteers?
In London.
Yeah, what happened?
What happened was all the hustings, they invited the 4 so-called main parties, partly because they did have some people on the London Assembly already, and that's what they based it on. Because we didn't have any Assembly members for Reform UK, I didn't qualify. So the LBC, ITV, Sky and BBC refused to have me on. And at that point, we were about 3rd in the polls. in front of the Lib Dems in the Greens, but we weren't allowed, or I wasn't allowed to. I mean, I never expected to win the mayor because London is a completely different country to the rest of the country.
Yes, tell me about it.
Exactly, and that point of view. But what we wanted is to get 3 or 4 people on the Assembly. We've got one on there, which I'm delighted with, Alex Wilson, good guy. But the fact is, it stinks. And I know of several postal voters, I'm afraid they of certain ethnic origin, and they got 4 or 5 voting slips they had, cards. So they voted 3 or 4 times. We've got to look
really.
At
so that was in London.
Yeah, it was in London as well, and even my daughter here, who in for the general election, got 3 voting cards as well. She didn't vote 3 times; she only voted once. But the point is, the postal system, because you don't need any ID, as opposed to the ballot box, you needed a photo ID, but you don't need it when you've got the postal vote. And those are the sorts of things. There's too much corruption behind the scenes for my liking at the moment. I've been campaigning as a public affairs campaigner, and I'm a grassroots campaigner, and I believe in honesty and respect for politicians and for respect for campaigns. We just didn't get it in London, and we're certainly not getting it at the moment across the country for reform.
But the whole point of this show is obviously to talk about the issues that the mainstream media don't. And I think you've just raised a very important point when it comes to postal vote corruption, because let's be honest, it has taken place. It took place at the London mayoral election. It took place in George Galloway's by-election. And is your contention that these groups of people are Muslim pressure groups that effectively, especially in areas like Tower Hamlets in London, manipulate postal voting?
I'm convinced of it. Yes, I am, Dan. I mean, this is the problem we have at the moment. I've got a lot of people sending me information and evidence to prove that, to that effect, as I say. I mean, even in the by-election, I think in Wellingborough, when Ben Habib did so well, in the by-election whenever it was earlier the year, we went into a corner shop. This guy, I'm not sure what nationality he was. I think he was a Muslim, though. And he was proud to show his 3 or 4 votes. He had his surname first in one. He had his Christian name in another one. His middle name was in number. And he spelled a misspelling name. And he had 4 votes. And he obviously voted for Labour.
Such a worry. No, postal voting's a big one. For me, Howard Cox, I think it's one of those issues that the mainstream media doesn't talk about. I think there is huge corruption, and I love the fact that in Reform UK's contract to the people, they made it very clear that they would reform postal voting as well. My personal view is you should only be able to cast a postal vote if you are elderly or in the forces or can prove that you're away on holiday, because that would really cut down the sort of corruption and fraud that we've seen. Well, look, Howard, great to have you. I hope you're going to be an Outspoken regular now.
Yes, please. I'd love to. It's an honour to be on your show, Dan. Thank you, mate.
Great to have you. Reform UK's Howard Cox. Now, our Outspoken question of the day is, does Prince Harry deserve the Pat Tillman Award? We're going to be discussing this in just a little while with our royal mastermind, Angela Levin. So you can vote right now within our YouTube community. But I'm getting some comments coming in here. Diana says, Harry and Meghan do not deserve any awards. They have done nothing to be proud of. The end. From Ouya, I'm British. Harry has soured the Invictus Games. It should be taken off him. My deepest sympathies to all the Americans. He has belittled the Pat Tillman Award too. And Robert Evans writes, Pat Tillman was everything the treacherous prince is not. Mr. Tillman served his country with pride and dedication. The petulant prince betrayed his country and family. Well, Angela Levin has got lots more on this story in just a moment. But first, David Campbell Bannerman is today's outsider. And there's a civil war in the Conservative Party right now. The Tory wets versus, I would say, true Conservatives like Suella Braverman. But for some reason, even those on the right have started to round on Superwoman Suella after she told the truth about the party's failure. So I'm going to show you 2 interviews with 2 outgoing Tory MPs who were considered on the right, both taking Suella Braverman to task, both saying that she should not be leader of the party. First up, Jonathan Gullis.
I'm abundantly clear that I do not think Suella Braverman is the right person. I think Suella's rhetoric at times can be overly explosive, overly divisive is not what the country wants to hear in all cases, because I think it is too aggressive. And whilst there are some things that I would agree with her on in terms of taking on the civil service, which I do think at times has not been helpful or supportive towards a Conservative government, taking on the quangos that are essentially using millions of pounds of taxpayers' money but not having the level of transparency or accountability they should do. But I certainly do not think Suella Braverman is the appropriate choice to reunite the Conservative Party. And I will simply now wait to see who is willing and brave enough, to be perfectly frank, is a big task ahead of them, to throw their hat in the ring. And we'll wait, like all members, to see who we get to choose between.
I think we need a fighter. But Steve Baker has taken real exception to Suella Braverman, suggesting that she was in some way criticising the LGBTQI community by criticising the pride flag. This is what he said.
What's the point? What's the point, and who's the audience for this? And she also made some remarks about LGBT. And it's like, who's this impressing? And I don't want to particularly talk about Suella, but I think for all of the candidates, I do rather thank God that I'm not involved at all in it. Glad to come on. This will be the last thing I do before I have a couple of months off now. But honestly, who's the audience and who are they impressing by these words? That's what they should be asking themselves. To whom am I witnessing positive relations, consistency and expertise? Because this is straight out of the Harvard Business Review. It is well understood that those three things are the essence of foundations of building trust. And unfortunately, being negative, accusing one another of inconsistency, very often people say things which turn out to be wrong. But these are not attacking minorities one way or another is not the essence of building trust.
So that's Steve Baker and Jonathan Gullis going for Suella Braverman. And overnight, it was leaked that Kemi Badenoch, the favourite to take over the Tory leadership, had told the shadow cabinet that she thought that Superwoman Suella was suffering from some sort of nervous breakdown. I think she's just telling the truth. But let me bring in Conservative Party insider now, David Campbell Bannerman, who is one of the major voices of the Conservative Democratic Organisation, the brilliant CDO. David, so good to have you here. Wow, it has erupted into civil war so quickly. There is much to discuss, but first I wanted to get your take on Kemi versus Suella. It's quite inappropriate, isn't it, for Miss Badenoch to suggest that Suella Braverman is having a nervous breakdown simply for, I would argue, giving the Conservative Party some home truths after their worst defeat in 100 years.
Yes, thanks, Dan. It's great to be on your show, and it's like old times. And
it's great to have you.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think it's a civil war yet. There's no one shooting any guns, mercifully, but I don't think that's a helpful remark from Kemi. What she's suggesting is sort of mental illness or something. I think that is really below the belt. And it doesn't help her campaign. She's not widely liked, Kemi, amongst many Conservative MPs that she has to win over. And she is a strong contender. Don't get me wrong. Look, you had Steve Baker there, who's a friend, but I mean, he's responsible for a lot of this mess, thankfully, because he brought down Boris. He backed Suella against Boris, and now he's turned on her. And there's Jonathan Gullis, who took a nice job, deputy chairman of the party, under Sunak. And again, I think, actually, I'm afraid, compromising his principles on that. So I'm not terribly impressed with them as independent witnesses, because they're not. I think Suella has a lot to offer. I haven't come out in favour of any candidate, and I did help many candidates, including Jacob and Robert, who's an excellent campaigner and was well received on the doorstep. That's Robert Jenrick. So there is a choice. It's not clear what Priti is doing at the moment, Priti Patel. If she's running a campaign, she's doing it incredibly quietly. And I think either she comes out or the game goes past her and she'll have missed out again. So,
which is what happened last time too.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, my sense is that Priti is going to run, and that what she wants to do is bring the right of the party together with more moderate Tories, but do it with some of I guess, less vitriol than Suella and Kemi. But I don't know if that's the moment for that type of approach, because the problem you've got, David, is Nigel Farage ain't being quiet over summer. There's about to be the Starmada of boats, literally an invasion of illegal immigrants into this country via the southern border. He is going to be essentially trying to turn himself into the leader of the opposition over that period.
Well, I have great regard for Nigel. I was with him, as deputy leader of UKIP years ago, and the European Parliament. I mean, he will transform Parliament, I think, the House of Commons with his oratory and his opposition. And the Conservatives better watch out on that. I think any Conservative leader is going to have to take that into account. And I don't think it's wise to say we won't work with him or he can't join the party, as some have. I think that's very unwise. And it may be a criteria of many members that whoever we choose is prepared to work with Nigel, because it's not about doing a deal or joining together. I see this as a bit like the referendum. You're at the Brexit referendum, where you had two campaign groups with the same ends working in different ways, where Nigel would be the grassroots guy going out there with his public meetings, which he does brilliantly. But, the Conservative Party, more conventional, more parliamentary, more sort of governmenty opposition to Labour. I mean, it could work in harmony. I can't see at the moment any sort of formal deal or arrangement, but we do have the same ends. We want to reunite the centre right. Otherwise, this will happen again in 5 years' time, and it will be a disaster for our common cause.
Isn't Nigel the best leader of the Conservative Party? I mean, he said he was up for it. Why wouldn't you want him to join? I mean, Priti Patel and Suella Braverman have left the door open to that, at least. Yeah. Kemi Badenoch has slammed it shut in his face.
I think it's really unwise to do that. And the reason they're doing that is they want the vote of the lefties who don't like Farage and don't like Brexit, etc. No, I would welcome Nigel back if he's prepared to. I mean, his ambitions are probably greater now, having had the success he's had in this election. But, he was Beckenham Conservatives back until 93, back until John Major sold us out of Maastricht. He is really a traditional Thatcherite Conservative at heart. And frankly, the manifesto, it wasn't called a manifesto from Reform, was very much Conservative policy. And of course, it attracted a lot of Conservatives who didn't feel that the Sunak government was truly Conservative.
Yeah, me.
And either didn't vote or went to Reform. And John Curtis today came out with analysis saying that, actually Labour didn't really win the election. What happens is the Conservative vote went down 20%, 20%. And that is, enormous. And that's what's happened is Conservatives said, well, you're not Conservative, we're not backing you.
Mm. The problem is these dark people who run the party, these dark forces who think that they can take over without democratic processes so brilliantly exposed by Nadine Dorries in The Plot, still think that they should be running the show. They still want to take the power away from Conservative members.
They are running the show, Dan. That's the trouble. They've been running shows as it says in The Plot. And by the way, a lot of people think that's fiction. Well, it was 70 interviews by some serious people, including IDS. Ian Duncan Smith came out publicly as one of the witness statements, one of the people giving evidence on this. It's been going on for far too long. And what we need, by the way, and CDO's agenda is we need a 7-step approach. It's on our website, elected chairman. We need a new constitution, get rid of the William Hague one, who now we find out he's not even a Democrat or a Eurosceptic, for heaven's sake. We've been had by William Hague. And thirdly, we need to get rid of central office. We need a total clear out. What has happened is the Conservative Party has become so centralized that it gets away with being pretty left wing, and it cuts out candidates, including myself. It's not a whinge. Lord Frost, was not allowed to stand as a candidate. It's behaved disgracefully, and that's got to come to an end. And if it doesn't come to an end, I think the Conservative Party will come to an end. I mean, I literally believe that if we cannot make this democratic, properly democratic, put the power back with the membership, then it's already dying off. The membership is leaving, activists are leaving. We saw that in the election. And we are at serious risk of, most of our Conservative members going off to reform. If, by the way, Farage actually democratizes that party. It's only run by 4 people. It's a company, but he said he will. And I think that, again, will be a major challenge. We're not acting democratically and reform suddenly are. Then again, that will be a huge draw. So, we've got to wake up. We're in the last chance saloon now, and that was a terrible election, 250 MPs. I was in the Commons yesterday, and it was like a wake. All these people sort of complimenting each other and saying how terrible it all was, and all these ex-MPs all, ready for the chop of all persuasions from the right, left, centre. It was pretty miserable. 250 MPs. It was like a roll call of the lost. So we've got to wake up, and unless we democratise and we put the membership back in control and make it worth being a member of the Conservative Party, then I'm sorry, we're lost.
Yeah, it's really concerning, isn't it? What about Boris Johnson? You were a ally of his. He has been tweeting over the last 24 hours. Is there any chance of him coming back?
I mean, you know what Boris is like. I do believe Boris will be back. And if you look at his hero Churchill, who after the Dardanelles, a disastrous military campaign, he went off to the trenches for years. But he came back as Chancellor. Then after that, he went off again and he was bricklaying because no one was speaking to him. And warning everyone about Germany, and then he comes back as Prime Minister. So that's quite a model for Boris, I think. And I think he could well be back. But look, it's premature now. We've got to get on with those leaders we have now. And I hope those leaders, by the way, will sign up to allowing Boris back in. He's not on the candidate list at the moment, and he would need support to get back into Parliament. And that should happen as part of this process.
Yeah, indeed. It's so messy, isn't it, right now? It really is messy. I think the final straw will be if they take away the vote from the members.
Yeah. I've already been on the case, Dan, as you'd expect, CDO. I mean, the first stage was yesterday. Last night, there was a vote for the chairman of the 1922 committee. Sir Graham Brady was the last chairman. He's not an MP anymore. They've now gone for Bob Blackman. But both candidates, and I made sure of that, actually, by the way, were very clear about keeping the members' vote for the leader. And that is absolutely essential to me. There are different ways of doing it. You can argue about that. But I personally think there should be an elected leader of the party, elected chairman, and a lot of democratic reforms. But that also means an elected leader. You've got to have a way of electing a leader. Yeah.
No, indeed. David Campbell Bannerman, so great to speak to you, and thank you for being here on Outspoken today. Thank you. Now, what's so important about being independent is that I'm only ever going to tell you about products that I use and truly believe in and think can improve your life. So that's why I am so delighted that here on the first ever Outspoken week, I can tell you about Verso. As you may know, I have entered my 40s and the importance of staying healthy as I age has become really critical to me. So after a very stressful year, I've decided to focus on prioritizing my health so that I can stay as fit and sharp as possible while living a good life and still being busy and engaged. I now exercise virtually every day and take my nutrition seriously with the 16-8 fast, but that only gets me so far. Scientists like David Sinclair have proven we can now reverse aging with interventions that go beyond healthy habits. For me, I wanted a product that I knew would enhance everything I was already doing that is backed up with solid evidence. That's why I use Cellbeing by Verso. It has scientifically proven ingredients that fight the effects of aging by increasing NAD+ levels. That's the stuff that powers every cell in your body. I have been taking the product now for a number of months, right at the start of my day, and it has genuinely been transformative. I've found fasting easier and I've lost fat. I'm actually eating less too, believe it or not, but the team at Verso tell me that is due to its blood sugar regulating effects, which lead to fewer cravings. I'm sleeping better and waking up with more energy and feeling so much happier too. Basically, it's already taken years off me, and I'd love you to experience the same thing. Verso publishes third-party testing from each batch produced to guarantee you are getting what you paid for. And I'm very excited that to mark the first week of Outspoken, today Verso is giving you an amazing offer. If you head now to buy.ver.so/outspoken, you will save 15% on your first order. All you need to do is use the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. So I'm going to put the link in our YouTube and Rumble description. But to repeat, that's buy.ver.so/outspoken and use the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. Now back to the show, and it is time for Angela Levin, our royal mastermind. And my goodness, what a week it has been for Prince Harry. This controversy over the Pat Tillman Award just gets worse by the day, and now lots of folk are asking if he should actually hand it back, especially after senior military figures got involved. Angela Levin, so great to have you here, our regular royal mastermind. And Angela, wow, this has kicked off this week with Prince Harry and Pat Tillman. Do you think, because you're his biographer, I should remind people, you're his biographer, you spent all of this time with him, do you think he should accept this award, or should he turn it down now that you've got Pat Tillman's mother, now that you've got senior military figures saying you absolutely can't?
Yes, I think he has to do that. I think this is so important that if he doesn't, he will be plunging down even further than he is. What I find particularly interesting is that before we have thought that it's Harry's fault, that he wants to gather all these things because it gives him a boost, and Meghan loves them and he can put them on the shelf and all that. But when Admiral Lord West speaks, he thinks that he's allowing himself to be used by all sorts of people who want to just hang on to the fact that he's a prince, and it will give them more publicity. So it's quite an interesting view of that. And I think that one is, you put the two together and it is a bomb, isn't it? I mean, it's just ridiculous. He can't do it. He mustn't do it. He will actually wipe himself out. And he's not very popular at the moment. There's a piece on the papers about America who actually don't like him anymore, don't want him around. And Meghan loses friends a lot very quickly, and they've not been interested in her African Riviera orchard jam. And it's very, very difficult for them.
Scam jam, I call it, Angela. Scam jam. I mean, do you know what? I found it fascinating because even The Guardian now, the left-wing Guardian, who used to adore Harry and Meghan, are writing critical columns describing them as being in their flop era. So it certainly does feel like America has turned.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think because they live really in an isolated way, they're not really going out and seeing what the world is like. They don't realise how things change. I mean, Harry as well was so popular. He was the most popular royal for many years, and people didn't mind his mischievousness, what they called it that, and they cared about him. I thought he was terrific when I was interviewing him for the biography, and he was very good with people who had problems and kind, rather like his mother. And but now they've had enough of it. They don't like the lies. They don't like washing dirty linen in public, and especially not the royal linen. And they've got to make a huge change if they want to stay in anybody's sort of line of liking.
I mean, the thing is, Angela, if he is a decent human being, he will not accept the ESPY award. Because surely just out of respect for Pat Tillman's mother. I mean, come on, Pat Tillman was an absolutely accomplished American footballer who quit his career in order to fight for the US after 9/11 in Afghanistan. He was killed in a friendly fire incident. His mum says, no, I don't want Prince Harry to take the award. He is too divisive a figure. At that point, if Harry was a decent human being, he says, look, I've heard what Pat Tillman's mother has said. I respect her. She lost her son. He should just say no.
Yes, of course. Now, the thing is, both he and Meghan talk a lot about humanitarianism and that you should love people. I mean, I've always laughed at that because they've been so nasty that they're saying this is what people should do and they're not doing it themselves. But he must know about family. He's talking about his mother. He's talking about family. He's trying to get back to London. We don't know why exactly. And he can't actually pretend that this is not important. I mean, this mother has lost her child. He understands when someone who you really love dies and what it can do to you. And he can't ignore that because he, if anyone, can hear and see and think about what it is when you've lost a loved one. And he can't ignore it. That's what I think anyway.
The problem is, Angela, it now feels like he almost uses his military service for good publicity, but he doesn't care about lots of the principles of the military. For example, in Spare, do you remember he infuriated his former colleagues because he spoke about how many people he had killed, which was considered incredibly tasteless. And now these comments from Lord West are just completely damning, I think, because he's obviously very, very respected, and he said, I really think Harry should be well advised to sit back and not accept awards like this. It doesn't travel well with people in the military, and when the mother of the man who died doesn't want him to get this award, he should think about that. My advice to him is to sit back and not accept any awards at the moment. They are going his way because he has such a high profile and people want to take advantage of that. And I say,
yeah, that's exactly it. You know, that is it's a terrifying sentence. But I must say about the Invictus Games, that's one of the reasons they're giving it to him. It's not the only reason, but the one reason I think is the weakest of them all, because I get a lot of emails from people who are in take part in the Invictus Games and say Harry has ruined it because it's now Meghan's games, because she wants to give the speeches, she wants to march in, well, it's a sort of a march, it looks more like a Dior march, but she does a march with people who have been wounded before and they have to walk behind her, which is very humiliating for them and ridiculous. And they don't want him anymore. They also, Harry and Meghan, make a lot of charges of what they want, rooms decorated, special blankets and all sorts of things. And they don't really want them to do that. So they keep saying, well, he should go to me. Can I get rid of him? Well, I can't do anything. It's nothing to do with me, and I don't even try at any level. But, you know, if he does care for the Invictus Games as well, he could hand it over to them totally. It's not very far from what he's doing. He can't keep it for himself. And if he doesn't want to do that, he's in very big trouble. But of course, Harry can't see that now. He has different eyes, different thoughts, and he doesn't see the world in the same way that he used to.
Angela, it was our question of the day, actually, whether Prince Harry should accept this award or hand it back. We've had some brilliant comments in that I want to share from you. Sarah Pert writes, Royals give awards, they don't receive them. He has already accepted an award for his contribution to aviation, this despite not even being qualified to fly a helicopter alone. He is allowed to be a co-pilot. The optics of him receiving that award from a man who has a pilot's license, not to mention an accomplished actor, dancer and singer, I think that was John Travolta, wasn't it? Paul Bergkamp, says absolutely no. Harry is not an American by birth and therefore doesn't deserve to receive such a prestigious medal of distinguished honor. Those who decided to give him this medal need to rethink their decision. And Janak says Harry is using the Invictus Games for his own PR, as he and his wife claiming expenses. If so, how much? He should be donating money and not take them. He should promote the Invictus Games and not himself. And Amelia writes, no awards for princes. Princes are wealthy, titled and privileged. Organising the Invictus Games is something a truly honourable and noble prince would do for no awards, no prizes, no accolades. They would consider it their duty to their people discharged and take satisfaction only in knowing they have helped people less fortunate than themselves. Only an ignoble prince would accept an award for doing good towards the people. And I couldn't agree more, Amelia. And the thing is, Harry had an opportunity to turn this award down. The ESPYs wouldn't have given it to him if he hadn't have said that he wanted it. Of course, they check these things. And you know what? We've already had over 5,000 votes within our our YouTube community on this. Does Prince Harry deserve the Pat Tillman Award? This is a whopping, overwhelming vote. 98% of those 5,000 votes saying no, just 2% saying yes. And do stand by. Oh, sorry, you go, Angela.
No, I'm not surprised at all, because people can feel how unfair it is of Harry to steal this. Absolutely. I mean, he doesn't steal it figuratively. He just steals it from the people who have really been wounded and care. And you have to understand that and give. That's the key, which 2 or 3 of them have said. You know, this is the whole thing about our royal family. They give. They don't want to take. And Harry and Meghan have become just taking. And I think that's spoils them for people who don't like them anymore.
It's gross. It's actually gross. And look, we've got lots more royal news with Angela coming up, but you're going to have to sign up to our after show at www.outspoken. This Joe Biden situation just gets worse by the day. He gave a really unconvincing interview with George Stephanopoulos where he didn't even remember if he watched the debate. Look at this.
Did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
Well, what I want to get at is, what were you experiencing as you were going through the debate? Did you know how badly it was going?
Yeah, look, the whole way I prepared, nobody's fault, mine. Nobody's fault but mine. I prepared what I usually would do, sitting down, as I did come back with foreign leaders or the National Security Council, for explicit detail. And I realized about partway through that, you know, I get quoted, the New York Times had me down at 10 points before the debate, 9 now, or whatever the hell it is. The fact of the matter is that what I looked at is that he also lied 28 times. I mean, the way the debate ran, not my fault, nobody else's fault. No one else's fault.
And
oh dear.
Now, yeah, I mean, Angela, if they thought that was solving the problem, it clearly wasn't. It just compounded the evidence that he's unwell. And now, Angela, a doctor, a top Parkinson's doctor, has gone on the left-wing news network NBC in the US and diagnosed Joe Biden with Parkinson's disease. Watch this.
You noticed anything that gives you a red flag as a doctor?
Oh, yeah, I see him 20 times a day in clinic. I mean, it's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area.
He's also overcome stuttering, though. Could that be part of that, too?
No, this is not a palatal issue or a speech discrepancy, which is very different from a lemino dysfunction, actual word retrieval, where you pick a similar question or talk around the issue, plus the rigidity, monotone voice.
Wait, go back to that, the rigidity. What do you mean?
Rigidity, loss of arm swing, standing up lordically. You notice when he turns, it's kind of end block turning. It's not a quick turn. So that's one of the hallmarks of Parkinson's is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold, hypophonia. A small monotone voice like this over time is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
Wow.
I know, it makes you feel cold, doesn't it? I feel
He's in charge of the free world. I mean, what?
I feel sorry for him to get this disease if it's right, but he has to tell them. People have to know about it, and I think that his wife has got it all wrong, Jill, because I'd seen her. She speaks to him like this sometimes. And gives him the word that he needs to say. And I think she can't do it for herself. I mean, she absolutely loves the spotlight of being his wife and the lady of the world, really. But yet she can't do that. The public must see what's going on and must know how he is. And the trouble is, if he doesn't say anything, then people won't vote for him. So he stands much less chance in winning, doesn't he? Because it's very important that he's bright and understanding. And if you add, another 5 years to what he could stand for, then it's more dangerous, isn't it? Because it's going to be hopeless. And I've read several times that nobody's actually helping him. Nobody's telling him exactly what to say apart from his rather difficult son, Hunter. And I think that's also very difficult because he obviously is alone. And there's been a group of his staff who've been told how to protect him, the time that something is said, the words that are going to be used to say it. And it's a very big muddle, isn't it? But you can't hide it. You can't keep on hiding it. And if all these doctors know what's going on and can recognize from a distance, and some of them are going in every month, I believe, then something has to be done. But the other thing is that people feel he can't step down because it's so late. But I think it is too late, but it won't work if he doesn't step down.
Well, personally, I want him to stay in the race because I think we need Donald Trump to save the Western world. So I think stay in the race because then Trump is almost guaranteed a victory. But Angela, I completely agree with you about Jill Biden, but I'm actually going to go one step further. I'm perhaps less polite than you, Angela. I believe that this woman is evil. She is power crazed and evil because what Jill Biden is doing amounts to elder abuse. Can you ever imagine seeing your loved one in that state and thinking, I want to put them through the most stressful job in the world for another 4 years so that I can personally maintain power? Angela, if that was your husband, surely you would be begging with him, pleading with him, look, let's go and have a nice life. Let's retire. You've achieved everything you need to achieve, but this is getting dangerous now. So I genuinely believe she is an evil woman. I think she has plans of her own because that guy isn't in charge. And effectively, we have unelected Jill Biden right now running the free world. It is absolutely horrifying. And I think she looked like a very nice woman. Don't get me wrong. And I used to think she was very nice. But over the past few months, I genuinely have seen this evil side of her.
Yes. I mean, one of the problems is that a lot of people think she is a doctor because she's known as Dr. Jill.
Yes.
But actually, she's a doctor of education, got nothing to do with health. And I think that's very important. And the other thing that's very important is that Biden thinks he's got a God-given right to stay where he is. He does believe that God has given this position and he wants him to be there. Now, that's quite a difficult one to knock. I'm not saying that I don't disagree with I'm not saying I disagree with with her, but I mean, he's an obstinate man. And you do hear now, which might be the effect of his illness, that he becomes very spiteful, very nasty, and starts shouting and making all sorts of statements that don't really make sense, but are rather difficult to hear. And you don't know quite where you are with him. And it's hard to manage somebody like that. But I do think that he should not be pushed through this. It's just not fair.
No, indeed. The other big news out of the US, Angela, is that Alec Baldwin is in court. This is, of course, after he shot dead a crew member on the Rust film set. He's facing 18 months in prison. I know you've been following this case closely, Angela. What do you make of it? The jury was selected yesterday.
Yeah, well, the difficulty is that he's claiming that he never pulled the trigger of this gun and he was never responsible for the equipment. But, however, he was the co-producer, and if he was the co-producer, he should have known what's going on. You can't leave it to people to just do that and not double check, particularly if he was going to hold the gun. And I think that he's also been very superior about it. That, you know, he's a rich man, he's very popular, or was very popular, especially in the 80s and 90s. And he shouldn't have anything to do with it, as if it's nothing, you know, no responsibility for him. But of course it is, not entirely, but anyone who takes a gun and doesn't actually double check breaks their right to use it. You can't leave things to other people, especially if you're at the top of the ladder of what's going on.
And Angela, I know you're a huge tennis fan, so there was this moment at Wimbledon with Novak Djokovic. I'll remind people what happened. This is when he was booed by the crowd, but I think fought back in sensational fashion. Watch this.
And to all those people that have chosen to disrespect the player, in this case me, have a good night. Good night, good night. Very good night. Yeah. I'm hoping that they were just commenting on Runa and that they weren't disrespecting you. They were. I don't accept it. No. I know they were cheering for Rune, but that's an excuse to also boo. Listen. I've been on the tour for more than 20 years, so trust me. I know all the tricks. I know how it works. It's fine. It's okay. I focus on the respectful people that have respect, that paid the ticket to come and watch tonight, and love tennis, and appreciate the players and the effort that the players put in here. I played in much more hostile environment, trust me. You guys can't touch me.
I just love that. But then, Angela, the BBC was sent to do the official interview with him, and rather than talking about tennis, because they can't stand the guy because they're so obsessed with the COVID authoritarianism which he bravely rejected, they just kept asking him non-stop about the booing. So he ended up walking out. This is what happened.
Novak, your post-match reaction, speaking about some members of the crowd being disrespectful. On reflection, how do you feel now?
Same.
You're a 7-time champion here. Do you feel you get the respect you deserve?
Look, I as I said in the post-match interview, I thanked all the people. Most of the people in the stadium tonight were respectful, and I thank them. And I know that, you know, after watching all day tennis is not easy to stay. I mean, so I was thankful. You know, I don't take it for granted. Obviously, they're a big part of why I still play. You know, the crowds and people who really appreciate the tennis players and what we do and the efforts we put in, and we appreciate them paying tickets and coming to support us and to support the tennis, to support this beautiful tournament. So you know, I always try to acknowledge that. But then, you know, when I feel that the crowd is stepping over the line, you know, I react, and you know, I don't regret my words or, you know, actions on the court.
How do you feel your mindset is when there is some disrespect from the crowd? Does it help you play better?
Do you have any other questions other than the crowd? Or I mean, are you focused only on that, or any questions about the match or something like that, or is it solely focused on that?
Well, your immediate reaction after was.
Well, I mean, this is the third question already. I mean, I said what I have to say. I mean, maybe we can speak about it.
So with Alex de Minaur up next.
Yeah, I look forward to it. It's going to be a tough one.
He's going to be popular here.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Angela? I completely understand why he reacted that way, because the BBC guy had no interest in the tennis match. No interest whatsoever. Just wanted to hammer him time and time again over the fact that there was this booing. He had respectfully answered the question. They wouldn't let up. And I actually was disgusted and embarrassed. Yet again, embarrassed, because Novak Djokovic thinks this is something about Britain, that British people disrespect him. And I think it's only a very small section of BBC type people who do.
No, I disagree with you on that. I think he knows what goes on, and he can tell wherever he is if that's the way they're doing it. It's a boxing match of words, isn't it? You just punch and punch and punch until you get an answer that you can have as a headline. I think it's appalling, but I don't think it's just the BBC. I think different countries do this, and they do it because they're not interested in the game and how you hit it and what you felt when you're nervous and when you were okay. They just want to bring you down as quickly and as hard as they can, and they go on and on and on. It's also nagging, isn't it, when someone goes on and on at you. You didn't do it, you're not clever, you're not nice, and you just go on and on and on until you hope the person collapses and either swears at you or cries or something. You want that sort of an answer, and I think it's jolly good that he just says, can't you answer me anything about the game? No, they can't. They carried on with the pathetic question. So he walks off. I'm a great believer in that. I've done that myself, walking off, because that they just want to pull you down.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look, Angela, we've got loads more to discuss on the Royals. I'm actually getting some brilliant questions coming in for you as well, including on Prince Louis and Prince Charlotte, and also Archie and Lilibet. So what we're going to do now is head on over to our after show, our exclusive uncancelled after show. I would love to see you there. All you have to do is right now head to www.outspoken.live, click the sign up link, and what that means is that every single day you will be able to watch 30 minutes of extra content completely uncensored. And that's the key point, you see, because while it's brilliant to be hosted on YouTube and Rumble, it is not our own platform, and it does mean that we are effectively responsible for the rules that big tech put in place. At outspoken.live, it's just us, it's just our community. We cannot be cancelled, and all I am asking for is a very small contribution of £5 a month, and that funds everything we do here at Outspoken. Our guests, our researchers, the studio here, the technology, the streaming, plus it means that we get to have a deeper relationship. So www.outspoken.live, Angela Levin answering your royal questions. Remember, I'll always keep fighting for you. See you on the after show.